fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going around the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Hello everyone and welcome to round number 3 of the 2019 Season 3 iRacing Official V8 Supercar Series Championship. Tonight we head to the Temple of Speed for what should be a fast-paced, dramatic and perhaps even chaotic race with that run into turn 1 on the first lap being one of the trickiest on the entire series calendar. I'm Bo Albert and alongside me tonight is Mr. Zachary Hanlon. And Zach, we return once again to Monza. It's an extremely hot track, but that just makes the track even more difficult because there are so many little details to nailing a lap around Autodromo Nazionale Monza.
Yeah, driving around here at Monza is almost like catching the perfect wave in a sense. You just got to glide yourself around here as best as possible. And the perfect wave comes around very rarely indeed. But a lot of these guys are very much in practice from the iRacing Premier Series from yesterday. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. We've got a lot of drivers in here from last night and some people who are looking for a little bit of redemption. Ian Ford narrowly missing out on a podium in yesterday's race. He'll be looking for a good result here, and we know those cars are set up very well here around this Monza circuit.
Yeah, we saw the ERT cars being so quick throughout the entire weekend, so we know they've got plenty of pace. It's just whether or not they're able to use it in the race, because at the moment they're all chasing down Jake Burton's time of a 49.3, some 0.3 of a second quicker than any other driver on this circuit at the moment. So Jake Burton doing everything he needs to make it 2 race wins in a row. Of course, one last time out at Phillip Island, but it might be a little bit trickier. The guy who won round 1 on screen at the moment, Brady Myers for TTL Esports. A bit of a shuffling around in that team has just come in over the last few minutes. So a team that perhaps has a little bit more redemption to have after last night. Of course, it was a tough night for the guys at TTL Esports. So a lot of different factors going on. Sam Blacklock, another one who had a nightmare last night. V8 Scops, he needs to get a time on the board here.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's just coming through Ascari now in his Logitech G Altus Esports machine. He had a fairly poor race last night, but we did see him at Bathurst a couple of weeks ago carving up the field. I think he took more than 22 positions that night, so still in good form is Sam Blacklock as he comes down through the Parabolica now and very careful to squeeze on the power gently. A little bit too much there.
Might be a little bit behind there, Zach. Might be just really? A little bit behind, but Sam Blacklock does go to 5th in the end. So Jackson Suslan-Harlow on screen now at the moment makes his way through Ascari. So see what Jackson Suslan-Harlow can do. Of course, a very strong competitor. We've seen him at the front of so many races over the last few weeks, seasons, and really continuing his development. Now with a 6.3 KI rating. So he's one of the quicker guys when it comes to Australian V8 supercar racing. But what is he able to do as he makes his way out of the Parabolica, and just like Sam Blacklock squirreling on the power out of Parabolica, run to the start-finish line. The clock ticking down from a 148, a 149.8 is where the clock will stop, and that is P4 for Jackson Suslan-Harlow.
Yeah, nice lap there from Suslan-Harlow, and just going to show that that mix-up at TTL hasn't affected their confidence for the immediate time being. Brady Myers sitting up there in position number 2 as well. Brett Loxton looking good in position number 3 for Zuva Racing as well, and got some good names in this top 10 at the moment as Ian Ford just pops himself up into second position as well. So very good job from him. And he was having a good battle yesterday with Jake Burton. I'm sure that fire is going to be very much ignited for this evening's race.
Yeah, we saw how close and competitive those two were during the last night's race. So having another 28 laps for them to scrap it out should be a very entertaining watch indeed, as the drivers continuing their way through the qualifying session almost at the very end. So drivers literally getting their times in at the very last second. Corey Preston currently with no time at all as he makes his way to the start-finish line. Where does Corey Preston go in the end? A nice little jump up to position number 9. Sam Blacklock, though, improves to position number 5 as well. So two drivers making their way up the order quite nicely. One of the drivers that had a little bit of controversy surrounding the Scops weekend was Jordan Ross, and unfortunately for him, it just hasn't been his weekend or even his Monday. Jordan Ross not going to get a time on the board as the clock strikes 0 for round number 3 of the iRacing official V8 Supercar Series. And for 28 laps here at Monza, your racing grid will start off by Jake Burton and Ian Ford on the front row of the grid. Just 1/10 of a second between those two. A great effort in qualifying there. Freddie Myers, Brett Loxton, and Sam Blacklock will be your top 5. And you can see the times very close, reflective of that Scops weekend. So all the drivers well practiced know what they need to do. JSH starting for position number 6 in car number 3 with James Mackay, Michael Taliancic, Corey Preston, and Kurt Stenberg, your top 10.
Yeah, then we have James Scott in position number 11. Steve Jansen will be starting out of position number 12. Sean Thompson will start alongside Marlon McMullen, who's probably qualified a little lower than some might expect down there in position number 14. Brian Borg will start alongside Greg Sharp on the 8th row of the grid. Blake Purdy will line up in 18th alongside, Lee Day will line up behind them alongside Blake Purdy. David Kinman will start from 19th position, and Guy Leach will be in the top 20 position.
Kicking things off from 21st is Thomas McMillan. We saw him get involved in an incident during the race yesterday out in the 44 laps that took place. He'll be looking for redemption, as is Job Stewart kicks things off from 22nd place ahead of Jack Boyd, who found himself sideways through a Ascari, hoping to take a slightly straighter line through that section of corners this time in this race. Christian Smart, Wayne Taylor, and as aforementioned, Jordan Ross, who actually is not in the session at the moment. So I said his weekend was pretty bad. Well, his Monday's even worse because, ladies and gentlemen, he won't be taking the start to the race, but the other 25 cars will, and it's going to be lights out, and away we go, and it's a good start from the front of your grid by Jake Burton as he makes his way in towards turn number 1. It's a long run, though. We've got to see what happens. There's a huge shunt in the background. Cars everywhere. Cars over the wall as well. We'll focus on the carnage because that is one of the largest wrecks I have seen to a Monday night official series start, and I've commentated this series for 2 years, so that is saying a lot. Jack Boyd has enormous damage. James Scott, enormous damage. Blake Purdy doesn't even have a rear of his car, and we also have Brian Borg, just to name a couple, and we'll have to get multiple replays, as you can see up on screen, brought to you by Motum Simulation. And how did this start? That didn't even get a clear picture, but Blake Purdy got hit by every which way. A massive shunt there, and we'll try and get another angle because that was an unreal accident, and we'll try and see how it's unfolded. James Mackay, I believe, so was the first car around.
I think it was actually Corey Preston trying to sneak between James Mackay and Michael Taliancic, and he's actually just tagged Michael on the right-hand side there. Probably a little bit of a netcode reaction from Michael's car. Did not go favorably for that incident there, and you can see there probably a bit ambitious given the starting straight we have here, but when you get a ripper start like that, it is very hard to get out of the throttle, as I'm sure a lot of people who are racing drivers will know, and unfortunately that is a very poor accident. And as you said, Bo, we do not see many start line pileups in these races, and that's very unfortunate to see, especially with so many cars out of the race now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at the timing screen at the moment. It appears like we're down from 26 cars that entered the session down to just 16 still running, or at least heavily damaged. So that is a massive turn of form for this race. And I don't want to say the word, but I'm going to have to, because that could have championship implications for a few guys, because there were some quick drivers involved in that scrap, but our front runners all escaped. Jake Burton still leads from Ian Ford, Brady Myers, Brett Loxton, and Sam Blacklock, your top 5 at the moment. So they're hoping to have a good race, and it is a relatively long race as well. We saw 44 laps for V8 Scops on the weekend. We're currently looking at 28 laps for this race, so a little bit of management, a bit of fuel saving could go a long way in this one as well, Zach.
Yeah, and we did see last night, as soon as the pit window opened, people started coming in, and it was paying dividends for quite a few drivers, so that I would very much expect that once we see that pit window opening up, we will see a lot of drivers starting to come in as well, but they are obviously going to want to make that pit stop as short as possible, and especially in the draft here at Monza, it is fairly easy to keep the fuel saving up a bit. We're just having a look now up towards the front of the field, because Ian Ford is looking very agile on the back of Jake Burton right now, and looking like he wants to get himself a little bit further ahead as he follows behind as they come up into Parabolic and out.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things you will see about these V8 supercars around this circuit is just how low they put the rear ride height, of course, trying to get the maximum amount of, well, the lowest amount of drag, I should say. And they really throw that car to the rear. So it looks a little bit different how the cars normally would, as Marl McMullen gets the move done up the inside of the slightly wounded Corey Preston. But we'll keep an eye on our race leaders, because Ian Ford down that front straight is looking mighty quick. And that Logitech G car, we've seen it make passes on the weekend. What will it do on Monday? It backs out nice and early. Doesn't want to go for it. Doesn't want to play it too risky at the start. As you can see, the field really condensing to turn number 1. What can Jackson Houston Harlow do? He can hit the Logitech G Altus Esports car of Sam Blacklock, but all goes well, and Kurt Stenberg able to buy into this battle as well. But then a pretty big gap back to Marl McMullen. So it looks like we have a little bit of a 7-car breakaway at the moment. So the field definitely spread out from that first incident shenanigans, but we still have a very good race on our hands at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm actually interested to... I'm going to ride on board a bit with Jake Burton, because I think that he might actually be fuel saving up of this field as well. It was very suspicious into turn number 1. I mean, Ian Ford could have passed him very easily if he wanted to, but seems like he got out of the throttle really early, and then had to almost start braking very early as well, because Jake was getting it out of it quite early also, and you can hear he's definitely getting off the throttle.
You have one car off the road, and it's Thomas McMillan, and he tried to go the long way around the outside of, I think that might have been Christian Smart, through the second Lesmo. Contact was made, and actually Christian Smart just never really turned into the corner there, just kind of left McMillan out to dry, and there was almost a huge incident for McMillan, and he would eventually actually crash down the straight. So we'll actually get a replay up on side by side. Now heavy braking into the second Lesmo, and Christian just in a bit too quick, and he actually understeered wide, but we'll stay with McMillan here, because he goes to rejoin the circuit, gets a huge tank slapper, and it doesn't stop happening, and the inside wall says hello. Big contact for McMillan, and eventually his night would be done.
Yeah, very unfortunate for Thomas McMillan. He's had some good rounds recently, so very unfortunate to see for him. But yeah, I was just having a look back on board with Jake Burton and Ian Ford, and these guys seem to be pulling away quite nicely now, but they are definitely both saving quite a lot of fuel, so it's going to be interesting to see when this pit window opens up how these guys are going. Brady Myers is just starting to fall back a little bit now. He's coming under a bit of pressure from Sam Blacklock. Sam showing the nose a little bit, but not quite committing to going for the overtake, but he is experiencing quite a bit of pressure from behind, and Brett Loxton as well. So it's a pretty interesting battle up in the train up the front of the pack here, but the two cars out the front just starting to make a little bit of a breakaway now.
Well, that actually was a bit of a role reversal there. That was actually Brady getting past the turn number 1 on Brett Loxton, and Sam Blacklock managing to capitalize on that as well. So Loxton not going the right direction at the moment, but like you say, Brady Myers has fallen back a little bit from the lead 2 car. So is he able to bring that gap back? Of course, we know how powerful the slipstream here is on Monza, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue for them to reel it in, and we should have our 5 to 7 car battle pack for the race lead, returning just a little bit. Steve Jansen in contact there with Michael Taliantich through Ascari. So plenty of panels are being beaten up here. And if you are in the panel beater industry, well, you're going to have a very good time if you are here at Monza at the moment. But we continue to look at our race leaders, Jake Burton and Ian Ford. And, well, I'm not going to just include those two names because the entire field has closed up relatively quickly. So we do still have our 7-car battle. But everyone's just playing very nicely at the moment. No one's going for any lunges in this top 7. No one's really going for anything too audacious. Well, okay, ignore what I'm saying because down to the inside will go Ian Ford late on the brakes, and he just about manages to clear Jake Burton there. So job done. Ian Ford is your new race leader, but now it's Jake Burton's time to fuel save. So this race could turn on its head in just a few moments' time.
Yeah, well, I mean, he has been fuel saving this whole time, so it'll only really give him a bit more of an advantage. What I'm thinking is maybe Ian Ford is just actually going to try and straight out break away from this train and give himself a lead which will be unattainable to catch by anybody else. So we'll have to see how he progresses now that he's made himself through. It was a bit of a half-hearted move, it has to be said, into turn number 1. He made his intentions clear very early, but he was quite late to get up alongside Jake Burton, as we're just having a look now at Job Stewart and Christian Smart, who's coming up on the Pursuit Sim Racing driver now as they come up into Lesmo number 2 here. Got to be very careful on the turn in and just so delicate on the throttle application. Drifted out nicely towards that gravel there. And Job got a good exit out of there and is going to propel himself nicely down towards Ascari.
Oh, and, was that Brady Myers getting a slowdown? It is. So Brady Myers
like
plummeting down the field. So sorry to cut across you there, but that is a big change at the front of the field. And you can see there, 2 of the TTL cars actually regrouping up the front. But that is a very big change of position there. Brady Myers, of course, one of the big championship protagonists of this season. At the moment, he won the first rounds at Mount Panorama, and currently lies equal first in the championship standings with his TTL Esports teammate, who is just behind him. So it's all very interesting at the moment up the front of this 7-car field. But some interesting fights are happening in the back, as we were mentioning on before. But I think this pack at the moment is the one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. And it just goes to show how much one minor mistake can really change your position of the race here. It is still early days, and I think that's why quite a lot of these guys, you know, they've done the Scops race last night. They kind of know the drill. And especially in these official races, we do see quite a lot. It's a bit of a lull for the first few laps until the pit stops happen. And then once the pit stops have happened, then the gloves are off, because the only way that you're going to be able to get past your competitors is on track. And a lot of these guys are very aggressive, and they do not want to give up positions very easily. So that's when we'll probably see the gloves starting to come off, and everyone now, as we've seen, just doing a bit of fuel saving, keeping the car nice and clean. Brady's unfortunately made a little bit of a mistake, but it's very easy to do when you're in these high intensity situations in the train, and especially when you're in it for such a long time as well. It can really wear you down. But these guys are very, very good at what they do, and Brady luckily able to tuck in just ahead of his teammate, and will not suffer too badly because of it.
No, not at all. And that's a very good point you make about being in these little battle packs. Of course, when you are right behind the back of one of these rather tall V8 supercars, it is quite hard to see your apexes and see your proper braking points that you'd normally use. So Brady, just being behind the back of Jake Burton there, probably just unside him a little bit into Ascari, turned him a smidge too early, and that was all she wrote. Slowdown penalty there for the number 5 car. So easy to do, but nonetheless, we'll keep an eye on how this battle transforms, because at the moment, the top 2 have got probably one of the bigger breakaways they've had for a little bit, but Sam Blacklock's still in the draft range, so they'll be able to just stick with him ever so slightly, but almost an opportunity there for our top 2 to try and make some ground up. But we'll see how the rest of the pack is going as well, because at the moment, Job Stewart going for a move up the inside on Christian Smart in towards turn number 1. And late on the brakes there is Job Stewart, and he's just about pulled the car up into turn number 1. So a nice move there for the number 25 car, and he gets the job done. But Christian Smart gets a pretty nice exit here, and well, you can make a pass into the De La Rocha chicane, but it all depends on how your slipstream is and how much pace you have through Curva Grande. And you can see they're just closing a little bit with Christian Smart, but I don't quite think being close enough into the chicane, has to play second fiddle as they enter lap number 7.
Yeah, you have to be very committed to going for an overtake there. If you're not prepared to go 2x2, then you really have to consider your options very carefully, and it can be a very treacherous part of the track at the best of times, especially trying to smash those curbs as much as you can, and even more so in these V8 supercars. They really do pound over the curbs here at Monza. Just kind of straightens out those chicanes a little bit. But once again, Job Stewart getting a nice run out of the second Lesmo and down that back straight there, building himself out a nice little gap there. But Ian Ford has not really broken away as much as I expected. As we're just having a look back from Brett Loxton now and Brady Myers, who's starting to push himself back up to where he wants to be towards the front of this field. But Jake Burton, I think he was saving a little bit of fuel at the front of the race, and now that he's got that air hole in front of him that is Ian Ford, he's just able to manage the pace a little better while also saving the same amount of fuel. As we just see Brady having a bit of a look once again. Brett Loxton's very deep on the brakes there, maybe a little bit too deep for him, as Brady's now closed up quite well, got some nice traction out of that first chicane as well, and we'll have to see, it's probably a little bit far back, have to be very brave on the brakes, and Brett will probably have to come off the throttle a little bit early as well for Brady to be having a look down there. But Burton definitely hasn't let Ian Ford go as much as I thought we would see, and Sam Blacklock's still evidently pushing from the amount that he just got sideways coming out of there as well.
Yeah, but my only concern with Sam Blacklock at the moment is the gap got out to about 0.8 of a second between himself and Jake Burton, but it's not really closed in at all. Of course, he has the slipstream, so he should be able to do something with it, as James Scott and Blake Purdy actually involved in a bit of a scrap through turn number 1, and the switch off positions there between those two, and those two cars looking just a little bit sorry, and they're actually going to try and fight it all the way through to Curva Grande side by side, and this is a very sketchy part to be doing it, but they're pulling it off at the moment. No contact and good racing as we get the modem simulation replay up on the screen, so we'll stick with the battle on the replay here. See there, a nice move by James Scott up the inside there, but just brilliant traction by Blake Purdy, and this battle just keeps going on and on. As you can see, we'll look at the replay as they go down the inside at Curva Grande, and gets the move done, of course, with that very low aero package that he has from the first lap incident. And they now brake as hard as they can into De La Rocha chicane, and they still go side by side. You can see Blake Purdy carries so much speed through the chicane, gets the job done, a little bit of contact, but nonetheless, a great move there by Blake Purdy to hold on to the spot.
Yeah, very good little battle there, and good to see that he can still maintain such good control of his car given the amount of damage that thing has to it, and good to see him continuing on after some very poor luck at the beginning of this race. Poor luck has also stricken Brady Myers, who we now see on the screen, suffering a slowdown just a couple of laps ago and dropping himself 2 positions. And it does have to be said, Kurt Stenberg has really fallen off this train now. 2.8 seconds he has lost to Jackson Suslin-Harlow just up ahead, and he will find it very difficult to regain a lot of that margin. So I wonder how much of a pit stop these guys are going to have to make. A lot of these guys are going to want fresh tires, especially with the track temperatures that we have here today. It's currently 46 degrees, which a lot of iRacers out there will know is on the fairly toasty side, especially on the European tracks as well. So we imagine that guys are going to start jumping in as soon as they possibly can. We've seen the undercut in this series, and it was very evident in the Scops race yesterday that those who came in earliest did pretty much the best in terms of the positions gained on track. So have to see how these fuel savings are really going to affect these guys. Brady Myers now finally, with some intent, getting himself side by side with Brett Loxton as they come through Parabolica now, and both cars just sliding their way through the exit there, and a little bit of a hip and shoulder. Oh, no! Loxton, oh no! It's all gone wrong for Brett Loxton, and he has hit the wall several times. Heavy contact there for the Zuba racing car. Now, I wonder if he can actually flick spin it from into the pits from there. It might be a bit too much of a stretch. He's not going to be able to do it. He's too far down. We'll just get a modem simulation replay there. So side by side, nice move from the both of them, but it's about here, just a bit of a moment from Brady in the mid corner there, just pushes him up into Brett, and Brett coming back onto the racing line fairly aggressively. Didn't really have, you know, he's not obliged to run that far out wide. He was forced there as well, and also the bumps out on that part of the circuit are not ideal. So a very unfortunate incident there.
Something's happened to Jake Burton as well. Just getting a look, and he's got a slowdown penalty by the looks of it. So he's now lost the draft to Ian Ford, and that's a breakaway now for Ian Ford. We're getting a replay. You can see the slowdown there for Jake Burton, and he had to slam on the brakes, and Blacklock able to take advantage of that. But Ian Ford has broken away out front. So the only way he's going to be caught is if Sam Blacklock and Jake Burton work together. And Zach, we know there's a bit of a history between these two, so I have to wonder if that's going to happen.
Yeah, you wouldn't suspect that it would. So I think these guys will probably, Burton will be pretty angry at himself that he's made such a mistake like that, and he will definitely want to retain position number 2 at the very least for the most part of this race. So I think he'll probably try and get back past as fast as he can, and you can already see taking a very tight but straight line on the exit of the Parabolica there, really setting himself up for a large terminal velocity here. And you can see how much already he is closing in on Sam Blacklock, going to the inside down into turn number 1. And Sam Blacklock is not going to fight that. It's not worth the trouble for him now. He can probably get that overtake done in the pits, given the amount of margin that he now has here. Within a couple of tenths.
TTL car through the first chicane? I think it was. I think that might have been Brady Myers just completely overshooting him towards turn number 1, and he should have a slowdown, but by the looks of it, not giving up position to his teammate Jackson Susan Harlow, who of course, they're both tied on points in the championship at the moment. So Brady and Jackson fighting it out at the moment, but you're on board with Brady Myers and just way too deep, and you're never going to recover it from that fast into the corner.
No, he was very deep into there, and he looks like he's had to give up a bit on the later part of that circuit as well, because he now has Jackson right behind him. So he did have to give up a little more of that advantage, but we're just having a look at how Brett Loxton's progressing now. He's back on track, just ahead of that battle before we were looking at with Job Stewart and Christian Smart earlier as well. So down in position 11, definitely not ideal, but the train up at the front's really been broken up with these incidents in the last few laps, and Moore got a train of 3 out the front here, and Jake Burton's closed that gap
Ian!
very quickly.
Ian Ford has got a slowdown penalty, and it's all gone wrong. He has lost the race lead, and Jake Burton, who started the lap in 3rd, now holds the race lead, and Blacklock going to fight his way into 2nd place as well. Modem simulation up on screen, and just way too much curb on the inside. He was never going to get away with that. And it's such an easy thing to do when you have the advantage. You know you can break away. You just need that extra couple of laps of lap time performance to try and just push too hard. And he did, and cut the corner. But he's going to have to cut his way in towards turn number 1. So late on the brakes. Both cars wriggling, and contact with Blacklock. And Ian Ford, your previous race leader, is around at turn number 1 and has to wait for the 2 TTL Esports cars to go on through, and Kurt Stenberg to boot as well. And I've got to wonder how that is going to be looked upon. I'm not sure Blacklock had the overlap there, and I think that one might be resting on his shoulders. He had a little bit of his car there, but I just think that's a case of 2 doesn't go into 1.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that Ian probably could have been further up along there to go for the move. I mean, you can still go 2 by 2 there, but 40 didn't really give them the opportunity to do that. I'm of the opinion that if your car's there, you're allowed to be there. So I think that 40 probably could have given it Blacklock a little bit of room there, and I think that probably Blacklock wasn't too bothered about losing that position. I think he probably would have given him the room in the second part there if he had had it on the entry. But unfortunately, that's not the way it happened, and for Ian Ford, he is now way back from where he wants to be, even just sitting behind Kurt Stenberg now. And Sam Blacklock is also carrying a little bit of damage, and he's got 2 very angry TTL machines charging up behind him as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be Sam Blacklock right now with those 2 cars coming towards me, because they look like they're pretty quick, and He did mention there's damage on the Altus Esports car, which there is pretty substantial on the front right quarter of that car. So it's going to be down on straight line speed, and this track is nicknamed the Temple of Speed. So if you're connecting the dots, you'll quite clearly see that is not an ideal situation, and he's going straight to the pit lane. He is having none of that damage. He needs to get it fixed immediately. So he becomes the second car to dive into the pits just after David Kinman and Brian Borg as well. So a couple of pit stops are taking place. Kurt Stenberg also decides to take the opportunity on lap number 13, not quite halfway. So interesting to see that Kurt Stenberg has come in. I would have thought with a fresh car that doesn't have any damage, he probably would have wanted it to have just stretched the opening stint a little bit more, but for Blacklock, that call with the damage definitely makes sense. But where will he come out in regards to the TTL Esports cars when they eventually pit? Because, of course, Blacklock, with the earlier stop, probably going to have to run with a slightly heavier car throughout the rest of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really do want to try and ram the tank out as much as you can for that, you know, so you've got the little amount of fuel in the car's going as fast as it possibly can be towards the end of the stint. But at the same time, if the tyres have gone off or you've got damage or something like that, like we've seen from Sam, it can be the better option to just come in and run the heavier car for the rest of the race, and you'll still have a better overall race time. But, you know, that's unfortunately the situation that Sam's found himself in. And he'll just have to make the best of what he can do from here. So he'll progress on. So we just have a look now at the battle for what is, I think, effectively about 11th or 12th position here. We've got Job Stewart, Christian Smart, and just up ahead of them, Brett Loxton as well. And Brett Loxton's actually been losing a bit of ground here to Job Stewart over the last couple of laps. Obviously, Brett suffering a little bit of damage after contact with the TTL cars earlier in the race. But Job's been running a pretty good race here. Had a nice battle before with Christian Smart, and taking that Pursuit Sim Racing car a little further up the grid than where he started. He's actually started 22nd and is already up to 11th. So great race so far from Job Stewart.
A lot of pit stops taking place at the moment. Brady Myers, Jackson Susan Harlow, Ian Ford, and Marlon McMullen all taking advantage of the pits at just about the halfway point of the race. So we'll see where they come out in relation to Sam Blacklock, who was the first of the front pack to really come into the pits, and Sam just making his way just about into the braking zone of the Parabolica. We'll see where these drivers, especially the two TTL cars, do end up. They're still on the jacks at the moment, haven't been released just yet. Off the jacks is Brady Myers, and away he goes. But where is Sam Blacklock in relation coming into the start-finish line? Actually, Christian Smart is off at turn number 1. He is facing the complete wrong direction, but for Brady Myers, he makes his way down the start-finish straight. The only issue is he's fighting into the braking zone with Sam Blacklock, but the TTL Esports car will have track position, but Blacklock's going to try and fight it. And we've seen this move happen before. It didn't go well last time. Contact almost on the exit between the two Ford Falcons. One of the lesser popular car choices out of the two between the Falcon and the Holden, but they're both in the Ford. So it's equal horsepower, but it's the longer way around the outside for Sam Blacklock. Can he do it on the brakes into the De La Rocha chicane? Brady Myers going to have to go the long way around the outside. Knows he can't do it. Tucks in line. So it's also close for the TTL Esports car, but just not quite enough.
Yeah, but Sam's done a really good thing for himself. He's protected his strategy now, and he's got that damage off the car by the looks of it for the most part. And the car's obviously very fast in the straight line, out dragging Brady there. So good sign there for Sam, but he's got quite a margin that he's going to have to break to Jake Burton, who's still up at the lead of this race, yet to make his pit stop and looking very comfortable punching in those laps. So he will be able to take the tank out for as long as possible. And we have seen recently that some of the undercut is not as effective as we have seen in previous seasons, but it did seem very effective in Monza last night. So I do imagine that Jake Burton will probably have to come into the pits fairly soon.
We'll have to wait and see, but right now he's pretty comfortable staying out the front because he was the fastest car on track last time around with a 50.7, so the pace drop-off looking about 7/10 of a second. But I want to keep my eyes on Brady Myers and the two TTL Esports cars. So they're making their way out of Parabolica right now in the slipstream of the Logitech G Altus Esports car. And check out Jackson Susan Harlow. He was closing pretty rapidly on his teammate there down the front straight. You can see just edging closer, almost bump drafting in towards turn number 1 to get past Sam Blacklock. Not quite happening though, but Brady Myers so late on the brakes. I thought he might have given a bit of a hit there to Blacklock, but not quite happening. And all is clean at the moment, and they have a long 14 laps to try and sort out this little battle pack at the moment. So plenty of time left in the race for the two TTL Esports cars as we see James Scott and Blake Purdy. Now, I would love to get excited about this battle happening on screen at the moment, but the fact is, they've passed each other so many times. This is probably just a rehearsal at this point. This has happened so many times, almost 3 wide, as that was Christian Smart exiting the pits there. But yeah, James Scott and Blake Purdy, I've been watching on the timing screens. They've literally been passing each other 3 times a lap. It's incredible to see. Of course, they're both heavily damaged. They've not got much else to fight for, but at least they're able to fight for something as Jake Burton comes into the pits.
Yeah, I'm sure they're having an absolute blast out there. And, you know, when you've had a pretty average evening otherwise, why not get out there and have a battle with someone who's having as bad of a time as you are? And, you know, having those battles, it can be very fun indeed. And I'm sure that these guys up the front are having a lot of fun. I'm also sure that there's quite a lot of pressure building up in the helmets of these drivers here. Sam Blacklock doing a great job out ahead of the TTL cars, withstanding quite a large amount of pressure here, but it does feel like the move is going to be inevitable from the TTL machines. Jake Burton just leaving the pit lane now, so is he going to be under pressure from these guys? He actually could be quite a bit here. Down into turn number 1, he's going to have just a few seconds maybe, but he's going to have to. Oh yeah, and here comes Brady Myers now down the inside into turn number 1. They're going to make it work 2 by 2 through there, and that's just going to allow Sam a little bit of traction on the inside line there. He desperately wants to come across, but Brady's just got enough there that he can't quite turn in, and they're going to go 2 wide once again and down into the chicane. Brady's going to have to be a lot braver on the brakes, but then it's very difficult to make the second part of the chicane if you go around the outside there, and he's decided to just tuck it in and wait for one more time around this Monza circuit. But Jake Burton has a quite commanding lead now. Looks like he's got a couple of seconds up to these guys, and they're in a bit of a battle right now, and that's not going to help them progress up to Mr. Burton indeed.
No, but I'll tell you who it is helping progress. At the moment, fastest car last time around, Ian Ford, 0.4 of a second quicker than Brady Myers, 0.5 of a second quicker than this pack leader in Sam Blacklock. So that yellow ERT car, it might be a little bit damaged, it might be a little bit bruised, but it is by no means out at the moment. Plenty of pace in Ian Ford's car, and we've seen contact between himself and Blacklock, so maybe a bit of a redemption there between them two. And Ian Ford, despite what happened to him, being able to finish ahead of Sam Blacklock might just be the cherry on the cake of his night. But the case is still having to catch this battle pack at the moment. But if he continues the rate he's going, there'd be no issue about that at all, as Sam Blacklock makes his way out of Parabolica for the 16th time in this race, and finally has a little bit of breathing room back to the TTL cars.
Yeah, and they're drafting all over the main straight here at Monza, and I wonder if there's going to be a change of position here between the two TTL machines. Looks like they're fine, staying line astern for the moment and just trying to catch Sam here. But once again, Sam's doing a really good job just to maintain his gap ahead of these guys. But they are going to be really watching Ian Ford, because he is so fast right now, 1.5 seconds quicker than Jackson Suslin-Harlow and Brady Myers that time by. So that is an absolutely immense amount of time that he has gained, and I actually don't know how he's so much faster than everyone else on the track.
He was within 0.04 of a second of his quickest lap of the race, and that was without a draft. And we saw him drafting Jake Burton earlier in the race, so where he has this pace from, like you say, is a complete mystery. He is a man on a mission. Ian Ford in the Holden, because he doesn't want to use the namesake of what he has, but Brett Loxton making a move there, and that's going a little bit pear-shaped. That was quite a lot of curb he had to use, and doesn't look like there's a slowdown, so he might have got away with that as we get a modem simulation replay up on screen of the pass happening at the time. You can see they're just out of Curva Grande, and actually Taliantic actually gave that up, which I find a bit interesting. Quite a lot of damage on both the cars, so probably no need to really give it up. Taliantic probably could have fought that a little bit more, but he decides to give that up, and he'll continue on his way. And Talyancic had a pretty long pit stop compared to the rest of the field, so shouldn't be any fuel saving concerns. So just maybe decided to let Loxton through, knew he had better pace, just like Jake Burton has at the moment. A new fastest lap of the race, 49.6 up on screen. And if anyone can beat that, the driver is probably Ian Ford, because he is closing still pretty quickly, 0.5 of a second that time around compared to the pack in front. And we'll see if they want to change positions into towards turn number 1, because Blacklock was pretty defensive and overruns the corner. A beautiful switchback by Brady Myers, but he's only in the exact same position he has been the last few laps. But the difference is the traction is there as well, and Blacklock trying to cut across on Jackson Suslan. Harlow could be contact, and I think Jackson might have just lifted out that just a little bit to avoid that contact, because that would have been an airplane crash if that did in fact happen. But change of position up front as these guys all switch around. Brady Myers now at the head of his battle pack, but scrapping away like that means one thing: that bright yellow car is getting a whole heap closer.
Yeah, it's getting much closer, and even though those guys were quite a lot faster that last lap, still made up half a second on the guys immediately ahead of him. So he is gaining on these guys at an absolutely rapid rate, and I reckon 2-3 laps he'll be heavily involved in this battle now. Be interesting to see if Brady tries to play Sam here to try and allow Suslan Harlow to capitalize on this situation that they have here. They have Sam Blacklock in a bit of a TTL sandwich here, and definitely not an ideal situation for any driver being stuck between two teammates. So these guys might play Sam a little bit here to their advantage, and Ian Ford might be able to jump in on that as well. And look how close he is already, Ian Ford. He'd be in that draft range for sure, and he is going to be a part of this battle even sooner than we all thought.
Well, I don't really want to know what the lap time of Ian Ford in a slipstream is going to be at this moment. He is just so quick. He knows exactly where to place his car around the circuit, but where is Blacklock going to place his car? The answer is up inside, but that door's closing pretty quickly by the TTL Esports car of Brady Myers, who makes his way in towards turn number 1. So Brady holds position at the moment, but Blacklock definitely wants to try and get that spot back. So a very interesting scrap at the moment, but the difference is these two TTL Esports cars, there's a bit of a, even though they're teammates, a bit of a rivalry as such, because they are, at the end of the day, equal first in the championship standings after 2 rounds. So there's still a lot to play for between Brady Myers and Jackson Suslan Harlow, as Sam just goes for a bit of a dummy attempt in towards the De La Rocha chicane. But at the back of that shot, well, there's the 8 car. There's no more catching for Ian Ford. He has officially caught the 2 drivers in front last time around. He wasn't actually as quick. He was only 1 second faster than them. So he's dropping the ball a little bit there.
Yeah, only 1 second, and also only set his fastest lap of the race as well, which was literally 0.09 of a second slower than the fastest lap of the race, set by, or it was actually just over a 10th, actually, pardon me, set by Jake Burton just a few laps ago. Jake Burton as well is actually the fastest car on track at the moment, doing an incredible job out the front of this race, not holding back at all, and we get that great shot of these 4 cars as they come out of the Ascari chicane now. TTL, Altus, TTL, ERT, and ERT wants to make itself a little bit further into this train and up into the podium positions now, but Ian Ford's going to have to find another way around Jackson Suslan Harlow. So this is where it starts getting really interesting. We've got a driver who's very quick now, wanting to get through this field of very fast drivers, and definitely seems like Ian Ford has the car right now to be at the head of this train, but it's going to be very difficult. Jackson Suslan Harlow having to go on the defensive, and Sam Blacklock is going to go down the inside, but he's cooked it on the inside there, and he gets turned around by Brady as he tries to take the short way across the track there. And we will get a modem simulation replay of that for you, as Sam has now started to continue on track. So down the inside there, and just lost the rear a little bit as he was coming in on the entry and just had no turn into the corner. And I mean, unfortunately, Brady had to turn for the corner, couldn't straight line it, and that has not worked out for Sam Blacklock at all. And this has changed the battle up the front now because Ian Ford is in a much better position to get past both of these guys. But now they don't have to worry about Sam being there, so they can play this game a little bit differently. Jackson can effectively protect Brady a little better here. But as you said, these guys are still both first in the championship. I'm sure Jackson wants to be finishing ahead of his teammate tonight.
He is, but one thing I've noticed over the last few laps is that he actually has a tiny, just a small amount of damage to the front of the car. So I wonder if he's just sticking behind Brady Myers just to keep himself in the game a little bit, because if he were to lose that slipstream, he'd perhaps be a little bit of a fish out of water at that point. So it's not the worst amount of damage, won't, completely leave him vulnerable to anyone else, but I'm just wondering if that's the thinking there, why he's not really attacking Brady Myers despite the championship situation at the moment. Of course, it's only 2 rounds into the championship, so it's not like it's coming down to the wire between these two, but still very interesting to see as actually Jake Burton, now that I think about it, putting himself in quite a nice little spot for this championship lead at the moment if he does complete the full season, as he's currently won 1 race. He could be on his way to winning a second, lead out to 9.5 seconds, still lapping within 0.2 of a second of his fastest. This is the never-ending battle between Blake Birdie and James Scott continues to rage on, and it's very, very interesting to see as well. But that little battle pack was actually the fight for the win in Split 2 last night, so it's a little bit of deja vu, but I don't quite remember there being this much passing last night. These guys are having the race of a lifetime. They just keep passing each other into every opportunity. It is fantastic to see.
Yeah, it's I think one of the best times I've actually ever had in iRacing. It's Ian Ford's had a massive slowdown, and that is incredibly bad for him right now. 7 laps to go. He's still got some time to regain that margin, but not ideal. Definitely this late in the race, you've been doing such a good job to catch up to these guys. That's just going to give them the confidence to pick up their pace again and really get on with it now that they don't have Sam involved. So that's a very bad mistake for Ian Ford there.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it almost allowed the driver of Kurt Stenberg just to get a little bit closer as well. He's doing a very nice job in position number 5 at the moment, flown a bit under the radar in this race, it has to be said, but Kurt Stenberg doing a great job and really finding a good result perhaps in just a few laps time as they enter 7 laps to go this time around. And James Scott there getting passed by some slightly different cars, so very unfamiliar territory for him at the moment. So it's not Blake Purdy going past, it's 2 TTL Esports cars, and it's probably the furthest away these 2 cars have been all race long as well, so I'm sure they're already feeling a little bit lonely, a bit lost without one another. As Brady Myers, you can see the speed difference they have down the front straight. And this could just allow Ian Ford to get a bit closer, of course. Had a bit of a slipstream there from James Scott, so Ian Ford just able to benefit from that situation a little bit. And that is one of the things, when you are a little bit further down, you always have to keep into your head that traffic always plays a factor. You can always make some big wins out of it.
Yeah, and luckily for Ian Ford, this has kind of played into his hands quite well, assuming that he gets past there fairly cleanly, which he more or less does, hanging it out on the grass a little bit, but he actually did probably pick up, if anything, a small amount of positive margin to his fellow competitors up ahead, which is always very nice. And I think Brady actually got held up a little bit by James as they came into the Parabolica, so it's actually worked rather well there for Ian Ford, luckily for him, but still a fair bit of margin to make up. But he is almost back in that slipstream zone already, about 1.3, 1.4 seconds behind Jackson Tucson Harlow now. So I think around here at Monza, you can probably say within 1.1 you're pretty much in it. So only a little bit of margin to make up now after that big mistake.
And we're hearing of a car blown up, and it's James Scott. He's off the road. And great Scott, as Jake Sperry said about 100 times last night, it is game over for the Evolution Racing Team driver, and there was big damage on the car from that incident on lap 1. And finally, lap 1 catches up to him on lap number 22 for him. So unfortunately, not his day. And Blake Purdy, I'm sure, will be having quite the heartbreak at the moment, as he finds himself all by himself, which is a shame to see. But the 2TL Esports cars are close still once again, and it's beginning to get to that point where if Jackson Sutherland Harlow has been saving anything against Brady Myers, now's the time to just start searching a little bit. Where are the opportunities? Where can he get that championship lead for himself and not share it with his teammate?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, he's been trailing for quite a while now, and he's always been there or thereabouts. So, given that they've got this gap to Ian behind them, I mean, they know that he's coming. They may as well just sort themselves out now. But, you know, they might want to wait until the very last moment when Ian's going to be all up involved in it. I'm not really sure, but 5 laps to go. We will find out very shortly, and it's been a great race from these two TTL drivers. They have had some, both had some minor mistakes. Brady getting a slowdown, cutting the chicane earlier, and Jackson getting a little bit of damage on that car throughout this race and hasn't quite probably had the performance that we'd expect. Didn't qualify too badly in 6th. He's up 3 spots, but obviously we've had a fair bit of attrition in this race, which has helped him not so much as it has helped others. Our biggest mover throughout this race currently is Job Stewart and Christian Smart are both on plus 11 positions each. So very, very good for those guys. Unfortunately, though, we do have a lot of cars missing from this race. Thomas McMillan, James Mackey, Sean Thompson, Lee Day, Greg Sharp, Jack Boyd, Guy Leach, and I'm not even sure Jordan Ross ever actually started the race. But
No, not at all.
yeah, so only 17 of the 25 cars that started this race are still circulating, but we are still seeing some good racing as we now see Steve Jansen getting a little bit defensive with the Zuva racing machine of Brett Loxton chasing him down. And back up towards the front of the field, Brady Myers and Jackson still very close, but very difficult to know if these guys are really going to do much in terms of overtaking. TTL don't mind, I mean, don't know so much about team orders, but they don't mind behaving with one another. And we have a look now, Brett Loxton trying to go around the outside into turn number 1 on Steve Jansen, who is going to make it 2x2, but I think that's going to be the move done for Loxton. Nice traction. Oh, there's going to be a bit of a hip and shoulder, actually, which is not, unfortunately, unfamiliar territory for Brett Loxton tonight. He's copped the raw end of a couple of bumps this evening, and that is another one of them from Steve Jansen, who, on the exit of turn 1 and 2, they just decided to give a little bit of a squeeze there to the Zuva Racing drive. We've got a modem simulation replay, and Brett, I mean, plenty of room on either side there for both of those guys. Kind of funny angle to see that from. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but those guys did meet on the track, unfortunately, and Brett suffering in what's been a bit of a night to forget for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, he was very high up the qualifying order and was doing a really good job early on in the race. Of course, started on the second row of the grid, finding himself down in 10th place at the moment, and actually, 11th place as of that incident. So, not been the night that he was looking for at all. And you know, he's always one of those drivers that can really contend for these official series championships. He's always at the pointy end. He's always consistent, but sometimes just things don't go his way, and when that does happen, it does seem to spiral a bit for him. And that happens to be 2 or 3 races in a row where things just don't go to plan for Brett Loxton. So, not what he would be wanting, and hopefully can turn around in the next few rounds. Of course, we can't forget in this championship, you do get 4 drop rounds, so the championship isn't over for any of these drivers until at least round number 5. If you don't start a round after round 5, you obviously won't be in contention for the championship. But at any point after that, you've got every way at the chance of having it. We see 3 wide at the moment on the screen, into the chicane, very deep on the brakes there, and it's all getting a little bit dicey. Brett Loxton trying to make the most of it. Joe Stewart involved in this scrap as well, and the 26 car there just trying to hang on to this battle up the inside. Almost contact. There is contact into Curva Grande. Hopefully no one gets fired into the fence, and Brett Loxton with the damage, just not quite able to have the straight line speed that he needs to hold the pack at bay. And there's going to be contact and hip and shoulder, and off the road there, the Delaroche chicane has to rejoin. That's potentially going to be a slowdown. Well, it should be a slowdown. Seems to be holding on at the moment, so very interesting to see that nothing is happening at the moment. You can see there, and finally he has to serve the slowdown, but Brett Loxton fires it up inside the second Lesmo and gets the job done. No, not quite. And with the straight line deficit, I can't speak English, that he has, just not working for him, as he's losing pace all the way through into Ascari. So he has to make sure that he gets it stopped into Ascari, late on the brakes, around the outside, contact made again between the two. Still side by side though, transition into the fast left-hander, contact again between the three. Somehow that was not an airplane crash, but just a few incidents there that probably didn't need to happen, and somehow no extra slowdown there for the drivers involved.
I could literally not think of a place I would rather less get contact on my rear quarter than on the exit of Ascari. That's very lucky that both of those drivers came out of that on the other side. And while we were watching that little scrap there, unfortunately, Ian Ford has put the nail in his own coffin, I fear. Another slowdown for the Evolution Racing team driver, which means that these two TTL Esports, I can also speak English, thank you very much tonight, drivers can be a little more playful with the last couple of laps that they have here. So maybe Jackson will potentially have the opportunity to have a little bit of a go here, and I'm sure that he would absolutely revel in the opportunity to do that. He's been sitting behind his teammate for such a long period of time now. It can be very frustrating having to be in that position, especially knowing that you've got a similar pace or an opportunity to get past your teammate. But of course, you always have to play a little nicer around your teammates. And this is a good run for Jackson Suslin-Harlow as they're coming down into Parabolic, and now he's actually got a little bit of a run on Brady here, and now would be a good time maybe to start putting some moves. But of course, Ian Ford is agonizingly close to them, and even just one or two corners worth of scrapping could really bring him right into play here. But Jackson's almost pushing Brady out of the Parabolic, and now he really wants to get a move on. And if he can't make a move down here, I mean, when's he going to do it? Come on, buddy. They're bumping each other down the main straight here at Monza to try and escape the speed of Ian Ford, who's charging behind them. And with 2 laps to go, I mean, I said Ian Ford put the nail in the coffin. He's actually already back there. Some immense fortitude from Fordy tonight. Every time he seems to get slammed down, he can just pick himself up and absolutely throw himself at these guys tonight.
Yeah, and it's fantastic to see how he's just able to rebound after all these little incidents or slowdowns that he gets. Just able to pick himself back up, dust himself off, and get himself right back into the fight with the sheer speed that he has. Of course, had a slowdown on lap 25, on lap 26 last time around, fastest car on track. So the pace was always there to challenge for race wins. Just the slowdowns were there for 40, as well as the battle between the two TTL Esports cars just spread out a little bit. So for Jackson Suslin-Harlow, if he wants to make anything happen here, he's going to have to make something, a bit of a breakaway happen very, very soon, because Brady Myers is just having to close up to him a little bit more, and it's not happening for Brady. So somehow Brady Myers has to make this move happen on the last lap.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen here. This could really, there's a lot of different ways this could pan out for all three of these guys, but at the moment, Brady is definitely the man in the hot seat. He's kind of got a rear gunner in Jackson Suslin-Harlow if Ian Ford does get some mega draft in this final lap and might be able to do something to protect him. But it's going to be all gloves off for Ian Ford on this final lap as they come through the Parabolica for the penultimate time. And he is right there on the back of Jackson Suslin-Harlow. Amazing run, actually, for Ian Ford coming out of the Parabolica. And he has some great speed coming down the main straight here at Monza. Tucks out of the draft, getting pushed all the way down to the bottom by Jackson Suslin-Harlow. And it's going to be very late on the brakes for Ian Ford. He's going to get the move done. That is fantastic. And now he's got one more to get by Brady Myers. Can he get it done on this last lap? That was so tight down into turn number 1 from all three drivers. Great racecraft by all three of those guys.
We've completely missed something, Zach. It's the other way around. Brady Myers was the car he got past. It's Jackson Suslin-Harlow that he has to get past on this final lap. I am so confused. When on earth did this position swap happen? But it's Jackson Suslin-Harlow in second place at the moment. And somehow Ian Ford has to make a move on this last lap. And where is he going to be able to do it? Because right now, he's not close enough. But there is damage on the front of JSH's car. That is going to slow him down a bit a little bit more drag on that car, so it's going to be hurting him the entire way down every one of these straights, and Ian Ford just closing and closing in the slipstream, but he's not going to have a chance into Ascaria unless he is uber late on the brakes. So it's all going to be about how does he get the power down out of this section. Ascari just filled the power, and Jackson was actually pretty tight through the left and the right there, so he actually scrubbed quite a lot of speed. So now Ian gets that beautiful run and will be closing. We're going to have to flip to our race leader, Jake Burton, who will take the victory, sliding his way through. But Ian Ford searching and contact at the final corner into the back bumper of Jackson Suslan Harlow. And he's trying to get the run, almost caught it again, almost firing JSH into the inside wall. And Ian Ford, he's got the speed, but he's not got the time. And Jackson Suslan Harlow will somehow get second place. And Ian Ford gets third at the death, managing to get past one, but not two of the TTL Esports cars. Kurt Stenberg with a great drive into position number 5. And then it is very much just a case of everyone who has had incidents or had to survive that opening lap shenanigans. What a race that ended up turning out to be, Zach.
Yeah, and I actually have to say quite embarrassingly that we've actually been calling Brady and Jackson in the opposite position for at least 3 laps.
No.
Yeah, pretty good stuff from the commentary team here at SimSpeed.
We are professional.
We are, well, some may argue that. So what actually happened was down the back straight after Ascari, I think Brady must have gotten a slowdown on, I think, lap number 26 there. And he, or lap 25, pardon me. And he actually had to give up the position down the back straight to Jackson Suslan Harlow. So bit of a lull there in the middle of the race, in the early parts of that race, unfortunately, because that incident at the beginning. But it was an absolute cracker towards the end there between those final 3 cars for the final 2 positions on the podium there. But Jake Burton, a very commanding drive, started off in the front of the race, got overtaken early, but just absolutely pushed on. And if you go back and you look at his lap times for that second stint there, fantastic run for Jake Burton. Jackson Suslan Harlow comes home in second position, ahead of his championship rival, most importantly in teammate Brady Myers, who came home in 4th. But Ian Ford, great redemption drive after a spin earlier on the race to get the final spot on the podium. Brady Myers in 4th position. Kurt Stenberg getting a top 5 for himself. Nice drive from him. Marlon McMullen doing well to get up into 6th after a fairly disappointing qualifying for himself. Sam Blacklock, spin towards the end of the race, unfortunate for him, but comes home in 7th. Corey Preston, after early dramas, came home 8th as well, with Job Stewart, a great result, up 20, or not quite 20, pardon me, but up 13 positions through that race from 22nd up into 9th, and Brett Loxton will take out the final position in the top 10.
And for our drivers on the lead lap, it's Steve Jansen, Michael Taliancic, and Christian Smart, your top 13. And then everyone else is at least a lap down. Brian Borg and Blake Purdy did make it to the checkered flag, and they are classified 14th and 15th. But from that point, 10 retirements. This might be the most I've ever seen in one of these races, and the casualty list begins with James Scott, David Kinman, Wayne Taylor, and then that first lap. Thomas McMillan, Sean Thompson, Lee Day, James Mackay, Jack Boyd, Greg Sharp, Guy Leach, and Jordan Ross was probably in the safest position on the entire track, not even at the track.
Yeah, it was, I think I have to agree with you. I mean, the competition level in the Monday night iRacing V8 Supercars series is very high, and it's extremely rare that we do see incidents like that at the beginning of a race. But you know, we see this from time to time in real life racing at the highest level, and you know, it's definitely expected, unfortunately, to happen from time to time here in the sim world as well. But it was a fantastic race nonetheless. Round number 3 here at Monza for season 3 of the iRacing V8 Supercars official series here on the iRacing Esports Network, proudly presented by SimSpeed Television. Do not forget to leave a like on the video and also subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network. But there's still plenty of action coming up later in the week on the SimSpeed Network, Bo.
Yeah, absolutely, Zach. And it's a pretty interesting one because the V8s are back at a street circuit where there's always a little bit of carnage going on. And they're at Montreal, which is always an exciting circuit for the V8s. And I think it actually suits them quite well. So I should be very interested to see how they get on there. And it's been an exciting season so far in AOC, so we'll see how it continues on. And we also have the Oceanic Endurance Championship round number 3. It's been an interesting first 2 rounds in that, and the LMP1, LMP2, and GTE cars make the way to the Temple of Speed as well. But they're going to be a little bit quicker because I'm hearing whispers that it's going to be the no chicane layout for the first chicane. So some very high speeds there for all of those cars involved. But that is all from us here at SimSpeed on the iRacing Esports Network for this Monday night. We'll be back next time for round number 4 of this series, where it just keeps getting closer and closer as we look to crown yet another champion here in this prestigious series. I'm Bo Albert. Alongside me was Zach Hanlon with Jay Kennan in the director's booth, and we will see you next time. This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's got everything outside of both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up top.
Oh my God. Oh, big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no, that's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God.
God.